My name is Ken McHugh from Sport Against Racism. It's just a question for Hans. We have a very rich resource of young people coming from the international diaspora in this country. Many of them are in direct provision centres. We have a programme in Surrey called Sport Aid from Africa to Ireland. And if you ask the young people in the DP centres what their priorities are, a lot of them will tell you that they're concerned about young female education. I'm very disappointed I don't see it on the list here, but I think we should maybe negotiate more goals coming from a sporting background. I'd like to see a lot more goals than less. And maybe we can talk about also disability, the area of disability, which just seems to be missing. The use of technology. Tom mentioned young scientists, the use of technology, technological development for social use production, and also connecting the Sustainable Development Goals to the United Nations Charter, Human Rights Charter, and the International Labour Organization. I think these are really important to make these connections, and I think we can negotiate them over the next year. Okay. But the important thing is, I just wanted to say that we have that resource, and I'm just wondering, are we going to use that resource we have to inquire as to what the priorities for young people are?
Okay, thank you, Ken.
I think there's an interesting point there about the negotiations around the goals. And when the first round of negotiations happened, I think we ended up with about 197 goals. Because everybody said, oh, you didn't say anything about this issue or that issue. And the natural response for the people involved in this is just add it to the list. Now, that's obviously unworkable. And I personally think 17 goals still is way too many. One of the reasons the MDGs were so successful is that there were 8, and everybody could, try and remember 8 goals. I don't think I can remember 17 goals and actually prioritize 17 things. So it's about how, and it's what I was trying to say earlier, it's about how you interpret what those goals mean. So a lot of the effort of the negotiations is actually not about the language in the goals, but about the targets, because what gets measured gets done. And what I tried to stress is that every country then needs to develop an action plan on how those goals will be translated. So in Ireland, the MDGs wouldn't have much traction because it was about increasing the numbers of people in education, for instance, and we were way ahead of those numbers. But the quality of education and the access to education, those are real issues in Ireland as well. So obviously, if Ireland were to make an action plan around the education goal, it would have to be something specific for Irish society. And that's what I was trying to say, is that these conversations will need to happen, and it will be even more acute after the goals have been agreed, rather than now. So I don't think it's necessarily the best thing to say, well, we need to add a disability goal or an education goal, or etc. I think it's about taking the language of those goals and saying, well, what we think that means is the following. I hope that's And
I think it would serve us well, I think, as adults, to hear what the young people are saying in relation to governance and accountability, because having the policy, the best policy in the world, if it isn't implemented, with a degree of fidelity, it's really not worth the paper it's written on. And actually in Ireland we have quite a long track record of that. Excellent policies, but really poor implementation. So I completely concur with what Hans is saying. I would rather that there were half that number of goals with about a quarter of that number of actions, but that there was a real strong commitment to it being implemented, and we knew what the indicators were, and that we collectively could monitor them.